I want to say welcome to it. Welcome back. We are here. Fresh week, good vibe. Hope you had a beautiful weekend. I want to welcome my co-host, Dr. Mala. Welcome to it.
Hi, how are you? Happy to be here again.
Good. I hope all is well.
Yes, thank you. What's going on?
Everything nice. I'm here as we normally do each and every week. We're here to try and bring the good stuff to the people and, give them something to think about. That's why we say everyday lessons, and you can always learn something every day.
Indeed.
Every day is a new day to learn something new or to refresh or unlearn, as we say.
Right.
Every day is a day to unlearn as well. You can try your best to unlearn something that you know within yourself is not healthy. And it can be in anything. When we hear words like unhealthy and toxicity, and we always think relationships. And that's not the case.
No, not at all.
Unhealthy doesn't always mean your relationship.
Not personal relationships, but it could be relationships at work, could be, that kind of interpersonal, but not necessarily private relationships.
Not private. Everybody think it's private.
Or romantic relationships.
It doesn't have to be. You can have a toxic relationship with your cleaner. Your boss. Your mailman.
Yeah, exactly.
You can have a toxic relationship with just anybody. There's somebody who triggers
continues to agonize you for nothing at all.
It could be with your gardener. Because they've been with you so long, they pick up bad habits and feel as though they can operate in a space and do what they want whenever they want without consequence, and all how you beg and try to say, listen, could you please not do this? And you might have inherited them from your parents, which is something that happens. Is a gardener who's been with your dad and mom for years, so you just...
And causes you agony and you can't do anything about it, or you think you can't do anything.
You think because you feel it's going to be, it's going to desecrate the memory of your parents. How dare you? When you was working for your father, he never got like you. And it's like, okay, that's my father. This is me. Things like that. And you put yourself in a box, like feeling that you can't tell this person anything because you're going to be hurting somebody else's feeling when you don't even know. When you need to really safeguard and protect your feelings.
Indeed.
First and foremost. And a lot of times we do that, and that is where we say, as Dr. Marla said, it's not about a romantic relationship. It's just about the relationship you have with yourself. Sometimes you have a toxic relationship with yourself, because you do not want to change things because you feel the effect and cause.
This way all along.
And not only that, like, if I do it, this will happen. But you don't even know that. That is just what you create in your mind. You don't know for sure because you haven't tried changing it. You understand? Right. So that's some things for you to think about as we start today's show. And what are we talking about today?
Today, I have a question. And the question is, what does world peace mean? So, world peace, literally world peace, not necessarily your entire world is not your relationship with your gardener. It might be, but we're on a grander scale now.
I guess you didn't hear me.
What was that?
You said, what does world peace mean? Having a real good doubles. In that moment, that's world peace.
See, no, that is important to some people. To you, that is important. And everything is the world is on its axis when you having real good doubles.
Of course.
So
there is nothing better.
So some might argue that
no. What I'm saying, for me, in that moment, there is nothing better.
I see. Okay, so right. I didn't quite think of that, but but that's a good one. That's a good one. But when we think of world peace, we want to think of because we're living in sort of a military exercise / war situation. And we see people are being evacuated and people have become refugees, over 4 million people at this point. And that's a lot of people.
That's a lot.
Several countries that we know don't have that kind of population. So just imagine your entire country has been uprooted.
That's 2.5. That's 2 Trinidads gone.
Right, exactly. Guyana only has 750,000 people, and that's a number they've been saying for a long time. Most of the Eastern Caribbean countries have 100 and something thousand, 140, 170, and so on. So it's several of those little countries put together. And all these people now live someplace else. Luckily, they have someplace to go. And so they're not just, on borders and sleeping in tents and whatever the places are taking them in, and being nice about it. However, what exactly does world peace mean? So when I was given this thought, one of the things that I said that it has to be, we have to distinguish between tolerance and acceptance. And even in our personal lives, there are things that we tolerate, but we generally know that we don't want to accept them. Mm-hmm. Like I remember when I was young, there are things that like my grandmother and mother would say, what you don't want at your front door, you'd end up with in your bedroom. And as you get older, you realize that, some things that you don't want to accept, or people would rather you not accept. As you go along, you get this fancy job, or you say, let's say you start working at a bank, because, when I was growing up, working at a bank was of good repute. So you'd want to do that and whatever. And so then you'd look for a boyfriend who has a job in a fancy place and whatever, that kind of thing. Then as you get older and you start to realize that, hey, these things are frivolous, or they could be frivolous or whatever, or you've been putting up this front all along, then the next thing you end up with somebody that your grandmother will say, but how you end up with this person? Mm-hmm. So you didn't want it at your front door, but you kind of have it in your bedroom. So that, made me think of tolerance versus acceptance, because now in our case, in the world, we have a lot of situations where people are just tolerating people, but they don't accept them. And it happens a lot in the workforce, where people are qualified to do jobs and they're being tolerated by co-workers, but they're not accepted. So they don't get any further than a specific point because they're not accepted into that circle.
No.
So you work here, you can do well for us, we tolerate you. And that's one of the ways we need to move from tolerance and accept people for who they are. That's one that I think is important.
Towards world peace.
And it could help us with world peace too. Another one is equality amongst genders. And I say amongst because it's not between anymore. It's not just male and female, So we have to understand that when we start excluding people because they are now a different gender, or they don't want to identify what their gender is, or they identify as transgender, like now bathrooms can't just be male or female. You have to have bathrooms that are that can accommodate everyone, whether that's in an airport, whether that's in a school, whether that's in cafeteria, wherever, And so being able to have that equality amongst the genders is something else that we need to look at. And I'm reminded now of the swim team that had a transgender child on it. And I say child because it's a young adult. And yes, they are swimming in the girls team, but they're transgender. So now they identify as women and everybody's up in arms about it. But that's the kind of thing that you get. Sometimes it works well for you when the shoe is on the other foot and you want somebody with extra strength to do whatever, you embrace it. But now when what the argument now is, women should not be left out of a team, or they are not picked because someone who was born with more physical prowess is able to do this thing better competing as a woman. And I understand that argument, but you don't get to make that argument if we're talking about equality. If you're accepting a transgender person, then you are. You're not accepting them with conditions, because then you have to put up signs and so on, and people feel like they're not included. So you go back to having, some issues there. So that's another one that I think is important.
And I'm going back to the tolerance part.
Right.
Like a lot of people in the US in particular tolerated Donald Trump.
Right.
Because they really didn't like him there. But they had no choice, so they tolerated it.
A lot of people liked him though.
And then again, a lot of people liked him, so it was kind of half and half. But the ones who didn't, they had to tolerate it. And
they had to live with it.
And I love the point that you made about, because that is something that it's so strange and it's so difficult to talk about now, which is the LGBTQ community. It is so unfortunate that you have to, like, I suffer with anxiety thinking about it. And that is not healthy.
Yeah, because you don't want to make a mistake.
Exactly. And I think that is so unfair that we live in a time now where people have to struggle to communicate.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's and they do respect that, which is so unfortunate. Because like I saw a meme, right, where someone said, if Will had slapped Chris Brown for speaking ill of the LGBT community, would everybody still be up in an uproar?
Okay, and you mean Chris Rock, not Chris Brown, but
Chris Rock, sorry. So somebody posed that question, and your
and
answer,
it's a valid question.
Your answer, the comments, everybody was like, everybody pause.
Exactly.
Because people is afraid to even answer. But
the
it's a real,
would have been completely different.
Completely. If somebody said anything ill towards, let's say, his son or his daughter for the way they dress and insinuated anything.
Remember how we canceled Dave Chappelle?
Right.
For when he was talking about now I can't remember her name, and then she died.
Yeah.
She was open for him and whatever, right?
But he spoke highly of her.
Yes, but remember prior to that,
they tried to come at him, and he had receipts.
Yeah.
And a lot of people spoke up on his behalf
people were quieted after he came and said, listen,
that's
Daphne.
my friend. Daphne was like his legitimate friend. He said when the whole comedic society threw her out, Dave Chappelle
he was the
had
one,
her opening. So people had to shut up at that point.
Exactly.
But my thing is, let's say, for instance, he went there to defend something like that. It's because it's so, and listen,
you have to pick your battles,
I know you have to, but I think it's so unfair. Like, we're talking about world peace, and equality amongst genders is a very important point, because
of course,
how can we have equality among genders when we are forced to only think about it one-sidedly?
Yes, exactly.
We can't think about it. We can't speak about it openly. We have to only talk about it because you are so scared, because if you say the wrong thing, you're dead. And then they operate in a space of privilege where we can do what we want because we're entitled to. But not you.
Yeah.
It's some dangerous waters we treading in, and it's just scary when you think about it.
And it just makes me think of where humanity is if you have to be so cautious, because we've lost that sensitivity. And that's why, I keep talking about emotional intelligence, because if you're self-aware, then you're just like, okay, maybe I shouldn't say this. Or maybe I need to think about this before I say it. Or maybe I need to be socially aware. And I need to understand that if I get up on stage and do something like that, then there will be repercussions. So all these thoughts, a million things need to go through your mind before you act. And in some cases, you should err on the side of caution. And you should think, maybe I would rather be called soft or something instead of doing something that could have me canceled or have me, in the news forever, looking like I didn't think about it. So those are some of the things that we have to think about. Another major one is addressing wealth inequity. Because if we continue in the society, the way that our society is going, where, just a couple of people can afford to go to the moon, and then a couple other people, a whole host of other people are, thinking about where their next meal comes from, that is wealth inequality. And that level of privilege, and sometimes people are able to work to get out of a position that they were born into. People are able to elevate themselves. People work hard and pull themselves up by their bootstraps and so on. But we still have large disparities in income earning and in spending too, because there are taxes that protect the rich. The rich are taxed differently from people who don't earn as much and so on. So if we can't narrow that gap, that income earning gap, there'll still be a problem.
Always.
There'll always be an issue. Yeah. So that's something else that we need to address, because in a lot of cases, people are fighting, and sometimes people are fighting just to survive. So that is like at the lower level. But then when you have countries at war, it's really for resources and for dominance, and in many cases, wealth brings you dominance. So when you don't have it and you're striving for it, you start to do things that, seem a little out of character, and punish people, and people lose their lives for it. And that's never a good thing when people lose their lives over something like that, And I am reminded of in church, when we used to sing, and people still sing it, of course, in the Catholic Church, that song, Let Peace Begin With Me, and you offer each other a sign of peace and so on. We need to extend it beyond the church. Because if we're doing these things, the things that you do in your religious practices should extend to how you live your daily life. At least I think so. And so we need to figure out how we get peace from offering a sign of peace across the aisles in the church, how we get that into our daily lives. Because what does this all say? Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth. Let this be the moment now. So we could start with that. I think that's a great place.
It's a great place to start. You would think that people like Putin and Zelensky and they could have those thoughts to themselves and say, like, listen, let peace begin with me today and let me take the high road and
well, I think the Ukrainian president, he's trying to reach across the aisle because apparently he sent a note across to President Putin.
Yes, he is, but
he's been the one trying to reach out.
I take it with a pinch because I think he's in a position where he has no choice but to reach out because Putin is the dominant.
His country is being pummeled.
Exactly.
His people are dying.
If it was the other way around, would you think he would reach out?
Probably not, because he'd have a sense of dominance.
And that's the thing.
So he seems to be the fair one in this. Like, hey, no.
I could be wrong. I think the fairness comes from the fact that because when you read his biography, when you read where he came from, he was like one of those 007 guys.
Okay.
He was a young KGB person who they hired to do special
military might.
Who they hired to do special jobs. And came out victorious on many occasions. So he was basically shared and loved by his peers because he's like 007. He's just running a country that cannot stand against a superpower. Because let the tables turn. And he was going after somebody else. He has the skill set. I think he has the skill set to even get at Putin. He just doesn't have the means.
Okay.
I don't think it's about skill set to break
free. No, because now he's asking for weapons. He's still asking for weapons.
Right, because
obviously he wants to fight.
That's my point.
Or let's say he wants to defend his country.
Yeah, because it's not a war. He wants to defend himself. He wants to defend himself and his people, which is fair. And as a president, you're supposed to do that.
Of course.
So,
and then the last point I have about what world peace means. I mean, I think we need to think about pro-peace versus anti-war, because a lot of times we think that if someone is anti-war or if someone is pro-peace, then it means that they are anti-war. You may understand precisely why a war needs to happen, but you could advocate for peace. And I think Mother Teresa was the one who made that very clear, where she's like, I am not going to an anti-war rally, I'm going to a pro-peace rally. So there's a difference, there's a subtle difference, but there's a major difference too at the same time. It could be both.
Because it's a thinking. You go into anti-war rally doesn't mean you're against war. You're just against this particular war.
I understand why you're fighting. I understand why people go to war.
But this particular war here, we against this war.
Exactly.
But if you go to a pro-peace rally, you're basically saying that you are for peace overall.
Exactly.
An anti-war rally means, listen, I'm against what Russia is doing, but because that's what's happening right now. Let's be fair.
Exactly.
All the people in the US who hating Putin, let Biden fall out with somebody down in Saudi Arabia. The same people who hates Putin and want him dead are going to rally behind Biden and say,
because now it's personal.
Exactly. Death to the Palestinians. You understand? They don't care. It's like death to them. Let's go. One time they have to go. The Al Qaeda's. What do you call them? The radicalized ISIS? Muslims. No, the radicalized ones that they call can't remember the name of the top of my head now, but those you say, death to them.
Okay.
That's how fast they're gonna turn. So again, there are a lot of people who speaking now who anti-war in Russia, in Ukraine.
No, exactly.
The anti-war,
but they're not necessarily pro-peace.
They're not pro-peace.
Right. And we need to make that distinction.
The anti-war in Ukraine, because it doesn't favor them at this present moment, and we know why. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, look at what's happening because of the war, prices, gas prices and whatever. They just don't want the war because it's affecting them and their pockets. But if there's a war that could rack up somewhere that could make the average man in the US get free money, I am sure kill them all. That will be the cry. That will be the song cry. Kill them all. You wouldn't see anybody saying no, let's not do it. And I don't care if we're not getting nobody, because that is where humanity needs to prevail, and we always struggle
exactly. And so we could end with the first one, where we need to work on tolerance versus acceptance.
Correct.
And if we accept people for who they are, as opposed to just being tolerant of them, we'll end up in a much better place.
Yes,
much better place.
And guys, just like that, we're to the end. So until next time, we hope you stay safe and employ some acceptance more so than tolerance.
Indeed.
You understand? Accepting so what they are, accept your co-workers for who they are. And it's always cool to extend that olive branch and have a conversation, and one where you actually interested in hearing what the other person have to say, and you just might resolve some issues that you didn't even know. Because some people are walking around just hating things and hating people for no reason, because of the wrong perception that was painted by somebody else to fit their narrative. Because people come telling you something about somebody because they need you to think a particular way about that person so that they can be okay. It have nothing to do with you, you know.
Exactly. They just need you can't buy people's enemies.
Yeah, they want you to not be okay with that person because it benefits them.
Right.
It has absolutely not looking out for you. All right. So with that, we gone.